Okay, we're going to go through the button functions, the features, how things are organized, and what they're for, and what these different icons mean. Starting at the top left, there is the connect button. If your data card is powered on and you have a serial port on your computer that is connected to a null modem cable, which is connected to the host port, which is the top port on your data card 150i, then when you hit connect, you will see in the bottom left status that it is ready for data command. What you will also notice is this lightning signal, and then it says disconnect, because you'll hit the same button to disconnect. Now, something else you'll notice is that when it is not connected, the print preview card and execute batch are grayed out and they are not accessible. Once you have made a successful ready for data command connection, the print preview card button is enabled, as is the execute batch. Print preview is really for testing purposes or in certain circumstances where you need to create an identical card multiple times over. In prior versions, the DCPrint version 1 had a test print button over here in this area, and when you would click on it, it would print one card of the preview, and then it was done. In the print preview card in version 2, I can click on it and I can select print one or more up to 99 identical cards of the preview card. And I can change the preview by just clicking on different. So here's Frank, and then here's Michael, and here's John Smith, and so on and so forth. And if there were more rows of data, I could go through it. So the print preview card will allow me to print 1 up to 99 identical cards of the preview. Execute batch will execute the batch. So in this case, I have a batch of 4. If there were 10 rows or 20 rows, it would go through and execute until you ran out of cards, the output bin was full and required you to empty it. When you're doing the print preview or execute, during that execution or printing, it will put a stop button up here at that time. If you click on the stop, it will finish the card that it is currently doing, but then it will interrupt that batch of cards or that series of print preview cards. Okay, next is the settings, of course, is where you come in to set up the COM port, and that does need to be selected and then saved. It's also where you can deactivate the software if you're not familiar with this portion of when you would use this, because it is limited on how many times you can deactivate and reactivate. You can only do it one time. Do not do this unless you have gone over those sections and you're doing it as recommended. But so the connection settings for the COM port and the activation deactivation is all under settings, as well as the send financial password. Send financial password is, in any system that we have done refurbished or came from us, is just data card all uppercase. If you see it printed as with quotations, ignore the quotations. That is just indicating the exact password. The quotes are not part of the password. So when I say data card and then hit send, I do need to be connected. It can't send anything, so let me show you real quick. I'll disconnect. Let me go back in here, and if I attempted to send this, it's going to tell me that the port is closed. In other words, I'm not connected. So once I'm connected, and again, this, pardon me, may not be the financial password on your system if it is not one of ours. This is generally what most technicians will reset these to after they come back from the banks or wherever they were at originally. So then we hit send, and of course financial password was sent successfully. I'll hit that real quick. The financial password is how you unlock the encoding module to be able to encode track 1, 2, and 3 data, magnetic encoding. So that's what that is for. Okay, the close button, of course, that's just going to close the software. So it does the same thing as would the X up at the top. And then the help button is going to launch the help file. The help file is going to give you screenshots and written instructions that take you everything from the installation of the software to the activation, both demo as well as using a software key that you received, as well as the manual and how to activate it, get the activation code and put it back in, as well as deactivating and the rules and limitations of it. It's going to go through on how you connect to the data card, And if you just go through this, this gives you straightforward instructions on all the buttons and how to use it. So it's very useful. Before you send us an email, go through this. It'll save you a lot of time and headache. Okay, so that would be the help button. And as we, from time to time, update the help file, we'll send you a replacement file for that. Okay, under card data, we can create a new document. New document just means that it's going to get rid of any data that's in here with a new one. So if I had data in here, which let's say I'm here and I want to do new, just going to delete that because I now have new. So new, and there's nothing there. And at that point, I can add columns. I can put data in. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, let's say that's what I want to use. And also bear in mind that the Datacard only embosses in uppercase. So if I happen to, do that, it is not going to have any lowercase. So it's better just for visual purposes, so there's no mistakes, is just use everything in uppercase. And let's say this was a member since 115, and then I got some other information. All right, and I can sit there and go through and put in, and I can come back and edit. And then I can come back and save. If this is a file I already opened and it's already existing and I hit save, then it's going to save the changes or anything else, so be careful about that. If you've made edits and you want to retain your original version, be sure to use save as, so that you can save as and then name a second version or a different name and not overwrite your original file. So in this case I could say save. It allows me to save this in the standard, depending on what version of Excel that you have that you want to work with, the Microsoft Excel 97 through 2003. So if you're using Excel 97 or Office 2000 or Office 2003 or Office XP, then you probably want to use this version. If you have Office 2007, 10, 13, or the newer, they're referring to it as Office 365, then go ahead and use the XLSX, which is the Excel 2007 or new file. And so I'm just going to call this test. It defaults wanting to save it into my documents folder. I can, just like any other software, create folders and say, I could either say that this is my data files, and you can have multiple levels of folders. So I could have a client name here. Let's say I've got Acme. I'm doing this as a service for Acme Janitorial. I'm doing ID cards or something for them. And then I probably want to name this. Maybe this is a employee ID. Let's say that's what it was. All right. So I've saved that. Then let's say I make a change to this and all right, so, but I don't want to overwrite the original file. So I could hit save as in this case, and I could save it over top of the employee ID, or let's say I want to do employee ID 2, or just test, whatever, so that I have more than one file. So now the other nice thing about this is I can hit open. That will take me into my documents folder, into the last folder opened. So this is the file that we provide, which we refer to as the sample XLS. But anything that I created then, now I'll see that there's the two files that I've created, and I can open either one, and there it is. And then of course, once it's there, I can add columns, I can delete columns. So what we have is the new document, open, and this is what we would call the recent files, so that if I have recently opened a file, it will give me a little menu, so I don't have to go through all of here and then drill through all these folders and stuff. I can just go through that recent list. I can save the file. I can save as the file. I can add columns. So, I need more information, and I'm going to put here that this is let's see, level 2. security level or supervisory level, whatever. Now I can also delete a column. Now deleting the column, when I do that, is that I would hit the delete button. You notice how that stays there, and now I would come and say, well, I don't want this column. So I'm going to click on the column that I want to get rid of. Now, I have to do that for each time that I want to do it. It also, I can order my files by clicking on these. When I did that, it went top down instead of bottom up. So I can click on that, but now that column that I just put in is gone. Let's also say that I wanted to get rid of this row. Let's say I have 10 rows and I got a row here I don't want. I can just say delete that row, and then I can click oh, I'm on delete column, apologize. I can just click on it again and turn it off. If I'm here, I want to delete the row, so I will come here and say delete the row, and it will delete that row. If I highlight this row, I delete that row, and I'm back basically to just a blank 4 column. So I can add columns, I can delete columns, I can add rows. The way I add rows is just, once I get to the end and go to the next one, you can't have all blanks and make a new row, but once I've entered any data into these columns or into this row and then hit the tab, it will take me to the next row, and I can go back and edit any of those cells and then save or save as, and then I can delete any of those rows. So I'm going to delete the row, I'm going to delete the row. Let me just go back to my sample. Alright, much in the same way as the data, we can do the same thing with the profiles. Now, I can create a totally custom profile, and the way I do that is the order that the data is in is the order that it will pull over into my profile. And the way I pull data over is just say to add a row. When I add a row, it pulls in the first column. If I click the green button again, add a row, pulls in the second column, then the third, the fourth, in this case the fifth. I then get to select a font. Okay, so my font, it's an account number, I want that. This I want to be standard Gothic. Now you'll notice all this stuff is located down here, so we're going to get to that because you got to give everything an X and a Y coordinate. So for instance, let's show you real quick. Now I'm just typing it in and then hitting the tab key to advance to the next one, and I'm using a left column coming from the left over 10 spaces, so I'm moving over from X10, and then I'm hitting my tab button. That'll take me to the Y coordinates, and I'm going to put this as 7.5, I'm going to put this is at 10, and I'm going to put this at say 15, no, got these backwards. I'm going to put this at 7.5, and I'm going to put this at 15, and this I want to be rear indented. So depending on the rear indent font that I have, most of them that ship from us, if you did receive it from emboss.cards, would be MasterCard, but it is possible that you have one or more or different fonts, so it would be rear indent or MasterCard. So whichever you have, you'll put it there. And so I'm going to say I'm going to put that over 70 spaces and up 30. And of course, when it's rear indenting, this isn't going to happen right above this. It's going to be on the back side of the card. So imagine this flipped over, and then on the back side, that being there. Okay, and then this last data I was going to put on track 1. I'm going to encode that, or maybe I want it on track 2. Okay, so now here's my sample. So now I can save this if I want to save it. And if this is for, in this case, I created an Acme janitorial. Let's pretend that that's what it was. Employee ID profile. That's what we refer to the card profiles. It would be the template. Okay. It has the ability to delete rows. So if the thing to understand when you delete a row is I cannot select this and then delete it. It will delete in order that it came in. So hitting the add row pulls in number 1, then pulls in number 2, then pulls in number 3, then 4, and so on. And when I hit the delete, it's going to delete the last. So last in will be the first deleted. So here, because it doesn't matter if I select here and then hit delete, it's still there. Okay. Next would be new profile. So I've already saved this, so I'm going to say yeah, new profile. I can start all over again, adding rows and building it up exactly how I want it, putting all that in. let me go back to where I had, since I already had all that in. Now, we have the same save and save profile, and we also have the, clicking on this little down arrow, the recent list, so that I don't have to drill through all of the folders and the dialogues. I can go right to a recent file. Okay, next to that is the enable topping. That turns on the foil tipping. If you don't want the silver, the gold, whatever foil you're using to be topped onto the embossing, then I can turn that off. If I do, then I turn it on. Now there's a caveat to this. The Datacard 150i was designed to emboss and foil tip the bottom half of the front side of the card. So let us say that I wanted this to be up at 32. Okay, and or even let's say I wanted it up at 45. I wanted something up high. I think 40 is the highest you can go. Okay, but what happens is if I tried to emboss this with enable topping on, is it's going to fail. I'm going to get an error, and the reason for it is that the topper only has physical capacity to do from 24 and down. So if I'm going to have a Y coordinate greater than 24, I have to turn off topping. And you don't have a choice on that, because that is physically a limitation to the Datacard 150i. So you can emboss and foil tip anything up to a Y coordinate of 24, and you may not top or tip anything above 24, but you can emboss above 24 and get much higher. You can do about 2/3 or 3/4 of the entire card. You can't do the very top, because that's where the gripper is holding the card. Okay, and then of course you have the enable preview. I'm not sure why you would want to get rid of it, but if you did, that's what this is for. Alright, let's come back over to the data. Now that we've gone through and you have a brief understanding of the layout, I want to show you some of the more advanced features beyond just editing the cells directly. Occasionally what you'll find is for instance, I have 5 rows of data and I only need to use 3 or 4 of them, but they're not in the order, because remember, I can't delete out, let's say I wanted to get rid of the 512. I don't need that, I don't want it on the card, and I can't just turn it off. And so what do? Well, there's a couple different things you can do. First and easiest is just you could delete it out of this file. So I could say delete the column and delete that. So delete. Okay, let me reorder that or do it by here. And now that's not there, so now I see over here that I no longer have that 512, and that's there. There's another option and then I could save this file as an amended file, an alternate file that I don't save over my original, or I could save it over my original if I wanted to. But let me bring back the sample file, and let's say I want to get rid of that. I can also drag and drop. So I can click on the column, and then let's just drag it over to the end. And now I see right now I don't have the date in there, 512, because remember, the card profiles come in the first column, then the second, and the third. So even though you see these 1 and then 2s over here, it doesn't follow that numerical order. So these numbers are the labels for the original column order, not the order that they will be pulled in over here. It will pull in the first physical column, the second physical column, the third physical column, and I can change up. Now I can see Michael Green is down here. Now it changes the order for the data, but it does not change the order. So right now it looks like it's wanting to track to magnetic encode Michael Green. So these parts here stay consistent, and you would have to manually go back and tell, if Michael Green is supposed to be, embossed, and do I want this to be, oh, that's not the rear indent, so I'm going to put this the rear indent. Oh, and this is the track 1 magnetic. Normally what we recommend is that, whatever you're going to do, put your magnetic encoding at the tail end for purposes of a standard method of how you would do it and keep things organized. Alright, so we can drag and drop the columns, we can add columns, we can delete columns, we can edit the cells directly, we can add rows in here so that if I wanted to add a new row of data, I can do that. If I click on the column heads, it will reorder, either ascending or descending based upon that column's values. So I can, as I was saying, add the columns, delete the columns. I can add rows based upon based upon entering in a new row that way. And then I can also reorder them through the drag and drop. I can save over the existing file, save as a new file. I can open directly through the standard interface dialog box that way. I can go to my short list of files that have been recently opened. If my file has been saved, now the one thing you need to be, if you haven't saved this and I click on new document, it will just delete that and it isn't going to ask you, do you want to save? So be sure that as you go through that you either you either save or save as before you get too far down the road and then find out you lost something. Okay, over here these cannot be dragged and dropped or changed other than to select the font, to select the XY coordinates, but these will always follow in order of the physical columns.